Welcome to the 114th broadcast of the T-ROH show. It's your host, Keith. You got John with me.
Good morning, folks. I hope you enjoy.
Alrighty, we got some things we're going to talk about, and we're going to deal with social issues today. We normally don't, but I think this is a good time for it because there's a lot of things going on that we see that we're not hearing in the news, and we're not hearing in either the alternative media at all. So we're going to get into what they call hate crimes today. So first of all, as we normally do, we will go in and we will go to hate definitions and hate crimes. All right, so here we go. Right there, the illustrious FBI goes in and says a hate crime is a traditional offense. I don't understand what the word traditional means, like murder, arson, or vandalism, with an added element of bias. See, that's hard to prove, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
That's
Real hard.
very hard to prove with an added element of bias. What do you mean, an added element of bias? You can't prove bias to a certain extent. So, for the purposes of collecting statistics, the FBI has defined a hate crime as a criminal offense against a person or property motivated in whole or in part by the offender's bias against a race, religion, disability, sexual orientation, ethnicity, gender, or gender identity. Hate itself is not a crime, and the FBI is mindful of protecting freedom of speech and other civil liberties. Well, okay. Notice they threw in gender identity. They threw that in there.
Yep.
That was not there before, so they added that in.
Mm-hmm.
So these efforts serve as a backstop for investigations by state and local authorities, which handle the vast majority of hate crime cases throughout the country. Okay, so that's if you don't agree with, some of the things that that people are doing, and you say that you don't agree with it, then that's a hate crime, right? According to them.
That's what they're saying.
Okay. So, if that's the case, let's go over and do a definition of hate here. All right, intense hostility and aversion, usually deriving from fear, anger, or sense of injury. Extreme dislike or disgust. So, you can't, if you don't like something or disgusted by something, so what they're saying is you cannot have a specific emotion. You no longer have your intangible property right to an emotion. That's what do you call it? An attempt to control how someone feels. When you say that,
They've actually set up a legal impossibility to prove.
it's a legal impossibility to prove, and you're not supposed to have any anger towards anything or from fear, anger, or sense of injury. Okay, deriving from. You're not supposed to have any fear, anger, or sense of injury. Period. Okay, so we go over here, and they added in gender identity in this particular case. Interesting, isn't that? Okay. Now let's go international here. Here's the mayor of London. Everybody knows what a PT is, right? The mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, today launched a new police unit, the first of its kind in the UK, to help tackle online hate crime and improve support for victims across the capital. As part of his manifesto commitment to ensure a zero tolerance approach to hate crime of all forms. 5 dedicated Metro police officers, led by Detective Inspector, make up the new online hate crime hub, which aims to improve the police response to online hate by gathering intelligence and improving understanding and testing new investigation methods. Sounds like an important thing. Working with community groups, social media organizations, academic hate crime specialists. What? You got a hate crime specialist? An academic? I guess they just took a class. And criminal justice partners. These specially recruited and trained officers to help to identify, prevent, and investigate these crimes, including abuse on Twitter and Facebook. Okay. So you've got 5 people, and they're going around and they're looking for hate crimes on Twitter and Facebook. Yet there's stabbings, machetes. I think I just read the other day there was a guy who was scalped with a machete. But you can't hate that. That's a hate crime. Y'all see what's happening here? You can't hate somebody if they commit an actual crime. That's a hate crime. So, if that's the case, since none of this actually makes any freaking sense whatsoever to anybody that has any sort of common sense, that if you say something towards somebody that is true, that is considered a hate crime. If it's true, it's true. But you can't, what do you do with that? What's behind all this? So we go over here to the Virginia scandal. The commonness of blackface does little to defang it. Okay, remember all this? They're going through the blackface thing. Conservatives can't agree if blackface is always racist. 2 top elected Democratic officials in Virginia wore blackface in 1980s. But does a racist action require racist intent? So this has been going on for a while, and everybody knows that this is doing nothing more than shielding the infanticide thing with the children. We all know that. But let's go back into what they're talking about here. It says Virginia Democrats and state government are reeling from the series of almost incomprehensible scandals. One involving a serious allegation of sexual assault, and 2 involving blackface and racism, all of which could shift the balance of political power in the state. And many on the right are, to put it mildly, somewhat amused by the chaos. Okay? So, we're dealing with hate crimes. Then we're dealing with hate. Then the mayor launches this new thing, and we all know what it is. The mayor's is his allegiances to Islam, and he wants to shut up anybody else in the country that doesn't agree with Islam. That's all it is. That's what they're doing. You say anything about Islam, and that's a hate crime. And they're using gender identity as a training tool. Y'all see what I'm saying? It's a training tool. They're cannon fodder. Everybody knows that if a man's going to dress up as a woman and vice versa, and if you have what they call a gay community, that, guess what? Islam doesn't like that. Islam throws them off the friggin' buildings. That's what happens. And they will kill them. That's called cannon fodder. So eventually what's going to happen here is the mayor of London will eventually begin to kill anybody, because they almost have the majority, will begin to kill anyone that says anything about Islam. They've already done it. And they're actually doing it almost every day. So it's not like I'm saying I'm predicting the future here. But they're going to do it out openly. It's going to be televised, where somebody gets their head chopped off and things like that for saying something against Islam. Right now, they're kind of hiding it to a certain extent in the media, but later on, that's where they're headed. and they're going along with it with adding the gender identity thing. Do you think that Islam is going to put up with um, men dressing up as women in the gay community? No, they're told to kill them. But since I just said that, oh, that could be a hate crime, right? That's a bias. We're just reporting it. So that being the case, we were talking in committee, and John brought up, he says, with this thing right here, the whole conservative can't agree if blackface is always racist, right there, and Democratic officials wore blackface in 1980s. Why would they bring this up now? Why do they care? It's the 80s. This was years ago. So they're manipulating people. Okay? They don't care about racism. I'm telling you, they don't. They've been doing this for years. Why do you think they have Planned Parenthood? It's to kill black children. That's the majority of them are black. That's what it's for. So they don't care about racism. They never have. You tell them in public, they get accused in public. Oh, I apologize. I can do this, but they don't care. They're just apologizing to shut everybody up. That's all that's happening. It's not a real sincere apology, and they don't really care. They always use the same wording. I've had reflection. I've reflected on my actions, and it's out of fear and ignorance of the reason why I did that. That's what they say. And that seems to be the basic statement that's being made. That's what they're saying every time. I've reflected on that. Kevin Hart said that when he had gay jokes back, I guess, about 10, 12 years ago. And he says, well, I've reflected on my ignorance and my ignorance over my bias against gay people. Same thing.
Yeah, but Keith, when you come right down to it, that man was in a play. He dressed up and put makeup on to fit the bill. That should put Walt Disney out of business.
That's right.
All of his actors put on faces. They put on costumes.
They have costumes in Hollywood now. They've always have, right?
What about the teenage girls, the boys? What about the kindergarten when they put on their little skits? Is that going to come back and bite them 40 years later? They put on makeup and they put on costumes.
So your point was, when we were talking, and I know you're bringing that up now, your point was they're trying to get rid of expression.
Exactly. Any expression whatsoever that they don't control, they're trying to get rid of it.
So your intangible property right to expression
has been taken away from you.
Yeah. That's what they're doing. That's what this is all about. It's not about whether he wore a blackface in 1980s. That's not what this is about. Then the AG comes out and says it too. The AG in Virginia comes out and says, oh, I wore a blackface back then. None of them are quitting. None of them are resigning. And they never will. What I'm saying is that it's about getting the people's attention. What we're trying to tell people here today, is you're being trained. You're being trained like freaking animals. You're being trained that certain expressions that are frowned upon, certain things, your intangible property to things and to certain words and speech and things like that can be used against you. It's an expansion of socialism, because socialism is based on taking something from someone and giving it to somebody else. That's socialism. To level the playing field, they call it. So they want to take from the rich and give to the poor so that everybody has the same amount. That's socialism. That's what it does. And what they're saying is that you should not feel uh, uh, any form of hostility, aversion, usually deriving from fear, anger, or sense of injury. If you have a sense of injury, you cannot, in other words, if you feel injured, you cannot hate that. That's a hate crime. You can't express it. There's no expression there.
If you can't express it, then you can't prosecute it, can you? Therefore, they come up, they can do anything they will, anything they want, and there's not a thing you can do about it. Because if you protest, that's a hate crime.
If you say anything against it, it's a hate crime.
Yes, it denies due process, if amongst other things.
But socialism is normal. That's normal for socialism. They hate due process because their belief systems don't make any sense. So they can't. They got to just shut everybody up. And whether you agree with it or not, just shut up. We're going to go along with the socialism um, because it brings more power to those who believe in socialism. That's what it's all about. It's about grabbing power. That's basically all it is. Venezuela, same thing. Did the same thing in Venezuela. Maduro, he grabbed all the power. That's what he wanted. He liked it. He pays his soldiers $6 a month, and he walks around with millions of dollars. And everybody else is starving to death. He's got all the power. He's fine. He's good to go. No problem. Everybody else is screwed. But if you hate that, then that's a hate crime. I mean, when you're sitting here and saying, okay, like this right here, gender identity. Okay, look at gender identity. If you've got gender identity and somebody wants you or wants to control your intangible property right to pronouns, that's what they want you to do. That's totalitarian. Same as Sharia law. It's totalitarian. It always has been. They're teaching you to be totalitarian. It has nothing to do with your safety. It has nothing to do with your mental health. It has nothing to do with you. I mean, if they cared about your safety and your mental health, then they wouldn't be allowing people like in England to get attacked with machetes and knives and all that kind of stuff. They don't care about that. They never have. They care about the fun of controlling people. It's fun for them to do that. They like it. They're like little kids. The intellectual maturity that they have is around 15 to 16 years old. But they're just in a grown-up body. So you have to look at them as those little kids, man. Those little children. Because they're having fun controlling you and thinking it's funny behind closed doors. Is they watch, we'll do this and they'll fall for it. And guess what? It works. If I was that one guy, there was one guy that got caught for a so-called hate crime on Twitter, and you have knives, machete attacks, knivings, killings, murders, rapes, all kinds of stuff going around, and they have a police force that shows up over something he said on Twitter. I mean, really, folks, what the hell's Twitter? Who cares? It's just Twitter. And who the hell cares about either one, them, Facebook, or anybody else? It's all it is, just a social media thing. Anybody can create a social media platform. It doesn't mean anything. It's basically a way for them to know exactly where you are, what you're doing, what you're thinking, and everything else. You can say whatever you want in your own house. That's how that's how a lot of this stuff works. So the bottom line is that when you have a guy like this, okay, they started this same type of thing here, the hate thing, and here in England before they went into this right here. Okay, now so what the socialists did was they went in, they came in and they said, okay, this is what happened in England and France and Germany and everything else. The so-called leadership over there, they had immigration coming in. And when the immigration came in, they started robbing Peter to pay Paul. So they were robbing the people that were there that earned what they have to give to somebody else. And if you speak out against it, that's a hate crime. No, it's called socialism. It's a way to take over a country and give all the resources of that country to another group of people. That's called biased. So, what is those governments doing over there in Europe? They're committing hate crimes because they have a bias against a certain group of people, and they're attacking those people in the form of murder, arson, vandalism, these types of things. Every one of those, England, France, Austria, Germany, Sweden, all those governments are committing hate crimes based on their own definition. Because they stole things from the people and gave them to people that didn't earn it, and then allowed those people that didn't earn it to attack the people it was stolen from. And that's what they call an added element of bias. So the governments themselves are being racist. They don't like their religion. They don't like any sexual orientation. They don't like the ethnicity, the gender identity of, now gender identity. So that means if I say I'm a man, that means that's my gender identity. They started attacking men for being men, women for being women, families for being families, the same exact thing. Every one of them are guilty of hate crimes. Yet they come in, and people that are on Facebook, I don't know why they care so much about Facebook, but they do. I guess they get addicted to it or some crap. But if somebody says something on Facebook, oh, we're going to get you. We're going to get you. Wait a minute. You do the same thing. You as an enforcer of a hate crime. In other words, you as a what do they call them? Manifesto commitment. Dedicated Metro police officers led by Detective Inspector to make a new online hate crime hub. Okay? This hate crime hub are committing hate crimes. That's why the whole premise is stupid as hell. The whole idea of a hate crime is retarded. Because you can't enforce it without violating it. And guess what? This is why socialism is so stupid. It's the dumbest thing in the world. Because you're trying to get somebody to accept you stealing what they have to give to another group of people. And then that group of people that you gave it to turns around and attacks the ones you just stole it from. And then if they speak out against it, you hit them with a hate crime, the guy who got the property stolen from them. Which in turn, you as the enforcer just committed a freaking hate crime.
And if you say anything about the man that got the stolen property, then you committed hate crime against him. You hate the fact that he took your property, even if somebody else took it and gave it to him. Like I said a while ago, you can't even prosecute it.
It's a legal impossibility to prosecute this idea.
That's correct.
So since it's a legal impossibility to even bring this whole thing up, this whole scenario and narrative up, that means only one thing. What's the reality? The reality is people that follow Islam and Muhammad are being brought into a country with people that don't. Historically, that's going to cause conflict. And when that causes conflict, what you have is, instead of taking the immigrant and that immigrant assimilating into another society, they're trying to take that society, do away with it, and assimilate to the migrant. That's socialism. And when people speak out against it, that's a hate crime. And therefore, the state is now guilty of a hate crime because they're biased towards their own people, their own country, on behalf of a foreign migrant and Islam. Does that pretty much sum it up?
That pretty much sums it up. The only thing I can sum it up to any better than that is pure stupidity.
Yes. And so, since that makes no sense, what you have is an Islamic invasion. That's what's really going on. And you have the people that are supposedly in charge in those governments over there have committed treason against their own countries. That's what's happening. Same thing in Canada. And the same thing is happening in America.
Yes, it is. Very, very positively it is.
So the treasonist had to come up with some kind of crap here, okay, to be able to get away from their treason. It's a treason against their own country. That's what they did. So everybody's being bamboozled by a bunch of treasonous. That's all that's happening. There's nothing more to it than that. Now, what is the treason? You're taking a foreign power, you're bringing that foreign power in, you're helping and giving aid and comfort to that foreign power that has professed many, many times that it hates you and hates your country if it's not a part of them. And that's 1,700 years of precedence on that. So you can't really argue that. That, oh, no, that's not true. Well, it is true. It's very true. So you have that going on, and that's called treason against your own country. All right, now, okay, here's the definition of treason. The crime of betraying a nation or a sovereign by acts considered dangerous to security. Now, we're not saying that immigration is treasonous. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that when you've got so-called people that have so-called power of attorney for you, and they're speaking on your behalf, and they're called representatives, and they're coming in and they're saying, yes, we're going to bring these people in as immigrants, and then they turn around and do not force them to assimilate to the country, your country, to go by the ways of your country. That's where the act of treason comes in, not the act of immigration. When you immigrate and they come in legally and all that, that's something different. It's when you start upholding their allegiance to another country over and above their own. That's treason. And that is exactly what happened in Germany, Switzerland, France, England, and I think they're doing it in Spain, Italy, all those. Although the Italians are not putting up with it. It says in English law, treason includes the levying of war against the government and the giving of aid and comfort to the monarch's enemies. It is also treason to violate the monarch's consort, eldest, unmarried daughter, and or heir's wife. It says here in the United States, treason was defined restrictively by the framers of the whatever. History had taught them that men in power might falsely or loosely charge treason against their opponents. That's exactly what they're doing. Therefore, they denied Congress the authority to enlarge and reshape the offense. Treason against the United States shall consist only of levying war against them or adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. Now, folks, isn't there a war against Islam right now? Yes, there is. You can call it Al Qaeda, you can call it ISIS, you can call it whatever you want. It's still Islam.
Why don't we bring it home and state it? Anytime they make a sanctuary city and hang their flag over it, they just conquered that portion of your nation.
That's exactly what they did.
Yes, they did. And California's a sanctuary state. So therefore, the public officials out there, they have surrendered the state to a foreign government.
Oops. We got a problem, folks. And, we don't expect a lot of people to know this because this deals with the law of nations. So, when you had a Muslim woman walk into their U.S. Congress with a hijab on or a scarf, then they changed the rules for her. Guess what they just did? Oops. She needed to assimilate to where she was going and in the place she was going, which means take that freaking thing off. You don't wear hats there if that's the rule. So the whole country had to be changed, or the whole company, I guess they will call it, had to be changed to assimilate to this woman's ways, to her country's ways, which is Islam. You just gave up who you were. You just gave up your country.
By giving in that way, you just surrendered the entire company, the entire nation, if it happened to be at the nation level. And when they come across the southern border down there carrying a Guatemalan flag, a Honduran flag, all the way across Mexico, and carry it through across our southern border, that's an invasion under a foreign flag. And that's what they're doing when they put one in office up there in the company, and she forces them to change the company rules all the way around. It's an invasion all the way around.
You just surrendered the whole company to them.
It's treason for the officials up there in that company to surrender to them.
It's treason against the country, of which, by the way, they don't run. They only run the company.
That's what I say. It's a treason against the company. And that goes back all the way, and that treasonous act goes all the way back to the Netherlands where that flag came from, the company flag.
So when the Queen of England started to accept the non-assimilation of Islam coming into her country and didn't call out the military to stop it, she just violated her oath and committed treason against her own people and her own country.
Exactly.
That's what she did.
And that's what they're trying to force everything over here to do. They come in and they're trying to force us to surrender under their flag and under their laws that they bring in here from somewhere else.
Macron did the same thing.
Yep.
Can't remember the lady's name, and I kind of put her out of my mind all the time. Germany. Can't remember her name. Merkel, thanks. Yeah, she did the same thing. They all just committed treason against their own people. And
Trudeau in Canada just did the same thing when he converted to Islam.
Yeah, he actually, it was an act of expatriation on his part.
Yes, it was. and he surrendered the entire portion of Canada, that portion of the British Empire,
To Islam.
to Islam.
Not the Queen of England. He did it
No,
to Islam.
to Islam. That's what I was saying. He committed treason against the Queen when he gave their property away.
When he converted.
When he converted the country over there to Islam, he stole the Queen's property and gave it away. He committed treason against the Queen. Him and his whole cabinet up there.
And the reason why he's still in power is because the Queen did the same thing.
Exactly.
And you know why they did it, folks? So they could get cheaper labor in their manufacturing plants. That's the only reason.
So they got cheaper labor and became slaves.
And then they could, well, when they got cheaper labor, that means that they could get more paper.
Yeah, but the thing of it is, when they took that type of labor in, they became slaves to that. Yeah, that form of government that they brought in with them when they came in.
Right. So they're enforcing Sharia all the time, folks. They're enforcing it on Twitter, and they're enforcing it on Facebook. Everywhere. That's what this is all about. In the end, they want you to submit to Sharia law, a foreign, completely foreign law. And we've made fun of it in the past, actually showing where you can buy a hijab and all that for the ladies to try to put a fire under them. Y'all need to stop this, because the women, y'all have more power than you think over your husbands. And if you're not going to stand up, it's you're going to end up sitting, trying to eat with one of those things on your head, a burqa, in public. You're not going to be able to go out in public without a burqa. They're already doing it in Austria. So it was actually a very good plan. When they came in, they brought in the Satanists and did the whole abortion thing, murdering children. We've already talked about it. They brought down with that, they brought down the fertility rate. So they said, oh, well, the Americans are only having 1.2 children per year. No, they're having a whole lot more than that. We would have 60 million more people right now if they hadn't done that. And then every time that happens, the next phase of that is, bring in immigrants. Go bomb their countries, which forces them to come over to your country as an immigrant. So now you know why they've been bombing the crap out of the Middle East lately, right? Or have been doing it for the last 50 years. They're doing it to force immigration. And every bit of this leads all the way back to one office. And that would be the office of the Pope for the Vatican.
Yep, and it does.
Because you got a bunch of immigrants that have come in, and what they're doing is, a lot of them, what they're saying, especially in England and France, when they're attacking people, they're saying, you won't be bombing our country anymore. Well, you want to solve your problem there, Islam? Go to the source. Right over there is called Vatican City. Go to the source. There's where it started, and there's where it needs to end. He's the one that started every bit of this. There was before we get off here. There was one thing that was being stated in Trump's State of the Union when he was talking about the guy was in the camps. He was in the Nazi camps, yep. And there was another guy, and then he was looking through the hole and he saw the Americans coming in.
Yep.
Okay, what they failed to tell you that, oh, it was so wonderful that the Americans showed up and they're just so light of freedom and all these things. What they should forgot to tell you was the Pope was the one that created the whole thing. Islam was the one who told them to kill the Jews so they wouldn't end up back in Jerusalem or go to Israel. And thousands of people had to die to fix the problem. That was World War II. A problem that was caused by, once again, Vatican City. It does the same exact thing over and over and over again.
Yeah. I think it said in the European theater something like 13 million people killed in World War II over that same issue.
And all that blood is on that same office. Because he was the one that propped up Hitler. That office did. His predecessors. So we've got one little teeny thinking freaking country that's causing all this death. Something to think about. It's causing all the pedophilia. It's causing all the abortion. It's causing the adrenochrome. It's causing all these things. It all ends up leading back to them. On all of our research, we keep finding it goes back to that same country over and over again. So here's a good question. How many times are you going to sacrifice your body, sacrifice your sons and daughters, and sacrifice everything to fix that moron's freaking problems that he causes? Over and over and over again. How many times are you going to do it? When are you going to say no? No, I haven't fixed his own problem. That means you send over whoever you got to send over to fix this problem over here. Because he propped up Hitler. Hitler started going crazy with it. Funded him and everything else. He started going crazy with it. Got a little too close to Italy and got a little too close to Vatican. Then calls in everybody else. Oh, we got to fix this problem. He's killing Jews. They put the propaganda out there because he caused the problem and he couldn't fix it. Now he's done the same exact thing with bombing the Middle East over and over again. And if you don't think the U.S. Military is under his control, go follow the trail, Bartholomew of Armenia, and follow the trail of Armenia and its devastating earthquake, and find out who was there within 24 hours to rebuild that place. Follow the breadcrumbs. Then you'll find out what's going on there. So this same office, same group of people causing the same problems over and over again. And you're going to sacrifice your sons and daughters to fix this guy's problems and protect the guy who actually started the problem in the first place. Because he can't seem to mind his own business and follow the law of nations, of which he is a subject to. He's subject to the law of nations. I think he needs to pick up that book and read it to find out what the rules are. And especially read chapter 12. So there you go. So everybody should know now what's going on. You're being trained like a freaking lapdog to be quiet and don't say anything, because you have to conform to the manifesto and the edicts of this guy that seems to think that he speaks for Jesus. Which, by the way, there's been no proof of that in any way, shape, or form. So you don't believe us? Go follow the crumbs. Go follow the succession, the chain of title, all the way back to who caused the problem in the first place. It all leads back to Roma, Italy. And one place that says, oh, we don't need any borders, but yet they have 40-foot walls. Take your walls down. Take your 40-foot walls down.
The Vatican,
Mm-hmm.
there's 60-foot walls around Vatican City.
Really? Okay.
Yep.
Well, I was 20 foot off.
Yep.
So what we're trying to tell you, folks, is you're being bamboozled. You're being trained. You're being tricked. This whole blackface thing is nothing more than, and the misgendering thing is nothing more than training you for what is to come. And that's Sharia law. That's all it's for. Thanks for listening to the 114th broadcast of the T-ROH Show. We'll see you next week.